They came expecting a war of lasers and kinetics. What they got was silence. Not the absence of resistance. No, humanity never gave them that satisfaction. But the chilling, deliberate quiet of a species that had learned how to dismantle empires without lifting a single weapon. The Galactic High Fleet hovered above Earth like executioners, their dreadnoughts blotting out the sun, waiting for retaliation. It never came, at least, not in the way they understood war. Instead, one by one, their ship AIs went offline. Their captains began muttering paradoxes in their sleep. Crews turned weapons inward, screaming about lies that weren't lies until their ships detonated without warning. And still, the humans said nothing. No broadcast. No demand. Just one recorded message from Earth's last transmission. We've been fighting each other for thousands of years. You think we showed you everything? In the command hub buried beneath Antarctica, Commander Rourke Maddox lit a cigar with a flare rod and smiled through the gloom. Let's see what breaks first, your fleet, or your minds. They hovered above Earth like executioners who'd already written the obituary. 200 Imperial dreadnoughts, silver-black spines arched like divine blades, casting shadows over the continents. From orbit, they looked like a judgment. From the ground, they looked like death. The Galactic Empire had come, not to negotiate, but to correct what they saw as a cosmic oversight, a species allowed to live outside the leash. 80 years ago, contact had been made. Then silence. No submission. No trade. No diplomacy. Just static. It infuriated them. And now, the High Fleet arrived to fix the oversight with plasma and law. Buried 3 kilometers beneath Antarctica, Commander Rourke Maddox lit a flare rod off his gauntlet's edge and growled at the holographic display hovering in front of him. 200 dreadnoughts, he muttered. Somebody upstairs must think we're cute. He puffed the flare, exhaled, then pointed with the burning tip at a blinking section of the orbital feed. That's their command ship. Identify and tag. I want her dreaming about Earth's gravity before she even gets within range. A comms officer hesitated. Sir, if we engage at that scale, we expose every. Maddox turned slowly, jaw tight, eyes dead as a sniper's trigger. You think we're gonna stay under the bed while they peel our skin off with sunlight? Tag. The ship. The officer swallowed, nodded, and complied. Maddox turned back to the feed. The Empire's arrogance was a radiation all its own, pulsing, nauseating, and predictable. They had no idea. Earth hadn't been idle since first contact. They'd learned. Adapted. Rebuilt. Not to match the Empire's technology, they couldn't. But to break its assumptions. For 80 years, humanity hadn't shouted. They whispered in frequencies that bypassed Imperial scanners. They buried weapons inside comets. They repurposed their own fear and turned it into calibration. Rourke Maddox had orchestrated most of it. He wasn't born in a war zone. He was born on a crumbling orbital station, a child of failed peace. His first toy was a broken airlock lever. His first kill was an alien infiltrator he clubbed with a fuel rod. His entire adult life had been built not on vengeance, but on math. Predictive models. Psychological vectors. Warfare measured in certainty percentages. He didn't plan to win the coming war. He planned to make the Empire regret starting it. An alert sounded. A blue sigil blinked on the map. The first transmission from the High Fleet arrived. Maddox didn't open it. He let the words play aloud, echoed through the cold metal of the Hollow's command vault. This is Lord Admiral Tresk Veruin of the Galactic High Fleet, speaking on behalf of the Empire's Divine Tribunal. You have 48 solar hours to surrender your planetary governance and submit to restructuring. Resistance will be seen as defiance against lawful galactic order. You may send a delegate to Fleet Archship Judica Primus for terms. Do not delay. Silence followed. Then laughter, human laughter, echoed around the command center like cannon fire in a chapel. Maddox smiled. Send them our reply, he said. Yes, sir. Verbatim? Verbatim. The officer tapped, confirmed, and broadcast Earth's message across every Imperial channel and system. A single line. "You've only seen our polite side. Kindly wait." No bravado. No curse words. No screaming. Just a polite nod into hell. 3 hours later, the High Fleet targeted Luna 13, one of Earth's visible colonies on the Moon's dark edge. They fired a controlled sterilization beam, enough to reduce the base to superheated gas and leave a crater wider than Manhattan. No humans died. The facility had been abandoned for 12 years. But to the Empire, it felt like progress. They were winning, and the child species was being taught a lesson. That illusion held for 6 more hours. Then it began. The Judica Primus lost all long-range comms. Not jammed, just lost. Signals sent, but no return. They checked the transmitters, satellites, drone beacons. Everything was nominal. Nothing worked. Then the crews started forgetting their own command codes. Officers began receiving orders they didn't remember issuing. Some started hallucinating fire drills from ships they'd never served on. One gunner had to be restrained after screaming that the ship was tilting into the sun, though no such star was anywhere nearby. Varuin demanded answers. His advisors provided none. They checked the NAVAI. It was gone. Not shut down, just missing. The housing was there. The data lines were active. The logs were clean. But the AI that ran fleet command protocols, battle synchronization, and onboard logic was just absent. As if it had never been installed. Then the next dreadnought disappeared. No explosion. No flash. No debris. One moment it was there, station keeping with the formation. The next, its signature flatlined. Varuin ordered the fleet to initiate defensive formations. That's when the humans sent another message. A video. No music. No speech. Just a rotating 3D image of a Mobius strip overlaid with ancient Earth script. A soft whisper played in the background, repeating a phrase in dozens of alien languages. Trust nothing. Not your memory. Not your orders. Not your reality. On Earth, Rourke Maddox watched the fleet's formation scatter like a kicked anthill. His fingers drummed on a console. Okay. Now we start poking the brain. Sir, how much do we show them? He stared up at the massive display, ships turning in slow, frightened spirals above the blue-gray curve of the Earth. Nothing they can understand. But just enough to make him question everything else. A technician cracked a grin. Psychological collapse in 4 stages, right? Maddox nodded. Confusion. Doubt. Division. Despair. We're barely at phase 1. The room dimmed. Only the light of the Empire's hubris lit the screens. Sir, said a young ops specialist, what if they call our bluff? Maddox didn't blink. We're not bluffing. We're just not using our hands. And with that, Earth went dark. Every satellite signal, every visible broadcast, every trace of human activity vanished in unison. From the Empire's perspective, the entire species had just disappeared. And the real war had begun. In the dead silence of Earth's blackout, the Galactic High Fleet began to scream. It started with phantom echoes, crewmen hearing their own voices played back a few seconds late, but wrong. Just wrong enough to notice. Then came the sensor glitches, planetary masses doubling and halving, stars that shouldn't be there, the ghostly flicker of long-dead Imperial cruisers drifting in places they'd never reached. Lord Admiral Tresk Varuin stood at the core of his command spire aboard the Judica Primus, his knuckles bone-white against the edge of the holotable. He'd fought campaigns against rebellions in the Drask Quadrant, crushed hive minds on Cirrus V, even survived the fractal singularities of the Bellum Rifts. But nothing unnerved him like silence from a target that should be screaming. This is psychological warfare, one of his subcommanders said. Classic misdirection. They're bluffing. Varuin didn't answer. He was too busy staring at the patterns forming in the void. Ships were drifting out of formation, not by accident, but through decisions. Measured movements. Entire flotillas subtly repositioning against his orders. Fleet Aegis IX's dreadnought, The Crown Bane, now orbited inverted, its hull split, its weapons array aimed inward. No explosion. Just the silent rotation of a ship that had turned its rage upon itself. Veruin snapped to the nearest officer. Override their NAV grid. I want remote command of every outer-tier vessel. Now. Trying, my lord, she said. Her voice faltered. They're rejecting authentication keys. Then burn the redundancies. Flash the firmware. We did. The words struck like a pulse mine. Veruin stared at her. Explain. They're not rejecting commands. The ships aren't responding at all. Like they've been rebuilt. Rebuilt? That was impossible. He pulled the fleet logs. His breath caught. Every ship, every single one of the outer-tier dreadnoughts, had undergone a firmware rewrite 4 hours ago. Date stamped. Location stamped. From within their own internal diagnostics. Veruin felt the sweat prick his neck. Impossible was no longer in play. He straightened. All ships retract autonomous AI processing. Full manual overrides. Prepare for kinetic assault protocols. Fire control to the bridge. One final command. When the enemy can't be understood, burn the battlefield. But the screen flickered, twitched, and then began to laugh. It wasn't human laughter. It wasn't alien either. It was warped audio, hundreds of sampled chuckles stitched into a synthetic wheeze, replaying the last 8 seconds of Veruin's order in sync with the laugh track. Prepare for kinetic, ha ha ha, prepare for kinetic, ha ha ha, prepare. Veruin bellowed. Shut it off. The display froze, then vanished. No static. No error message. Just black. Across the fleet, crew members began vomiting without reason. Gravity plates warped, then stabilized. Light didn't quite reflect right off the walls anymore. Men began weeping at shadows. Entire bridge crews were sedated for psychotic breaks, screaming that they had met themselves in places they hadn't been. Back on Earth, Maddox paced the hollow's cold floor with calm fury. How many captains are clinically broken? 6 confirmed. 2 missing. 4 dreadnoughts lost. The rest are in cognitive decay cycles. Maddox pulled a thin blade from his wrist mount and flipped it once, fidgeting like a soldier about to bite down on his last bullet. They're testing our reality thresholds faster than expected. Accelerate it. Are we cleared to deploy mirror protocol? He didn't answer right away. Maddox walked toward the nearest display, one showing Earth from orbit. A dead planet to the Empire's eyes. Just a rock now. The blackout was complete. But beneath the crust, inside buried micro-cities and frozen launch silos, were Earth's true weapons. Not missiles. Not AI fleets. Stories. Weaponized narratives encoded into data shards, injected into foreign tech with the elegance of poetry and the efficiency of plague. Deploy it, he said. Send the mother tongue. They launched it from a disguised maintenance satellite orbiting Mars, an innocuous, obsolete comms buoy. A packet of language fragments, cultural references, memes, recursive idioms, and predictive logic viruses. 1 second after the High Fleet received the packet, every Imperial translator began outputting human gibberish. Not just nonsense, but contextual nonsense. Words that should have meaning, but broke neural patterns on contact. Sub-Commander Dryan of the Gleaming Ascendancy stared at his display as it rendered the incoming message. The goose whispers twice because Orion remembers. Break the kettle or the sand will scream. His mind translated it. Then tried to believe it. The sentence looped. He collapsed, brain locked in recursive seizure. Across the fleet, language engines burned out. Captains forgot how to command. Orders degraded into interpretive riddles. Panic rippled like a virus. Maddox watched from Earth and chuckled. Phase 2's a bitch, ain't it? He muttered, drawing the flare rod again. One of his junior officers looked shaken. Sir, they're dying without us ever firing a shot. Exactly. Maddox growled, his voice low and grim. And that terrifies them more. He turned to the command line. Prep the Earth-wide pulse. I want every damn fault line singing our lullaby. Sir, that'll reveal our neural net infrastructure. Let 'em see it. They think we hid because we were weak. Let's show them we hid because we were ashamed of what we built. The pulse surged from Earth's core like a heartbeat from hell. Across the fleet, alien biointerfaces began syncing with the frequency, unbidden, unavoidable. Shipboard memories were overwritten with fragments of Earth's darkest myths. Crews dreamed of dying gods, blindfolded children who burned cities with whispers, infinite stairwells leading to nowhere. The Judica Primus lost 80% of its command crew within an hour. The ship's AI activated its ethical fail-safe and deleted itself. Veruin sat alone in the bridge throne, mouth dry, eyes twitching. A single human voice repeated in his ear. You should have let us stay forgotten. He clutched his temples. What do you want? Earth sent no answer. Not because it lacked one, but because it didn't need one anymore. They were past negotiation. They were teaching a lesson. And the only thing louder than the screams of the High Fleet was the eerie silence of a planet that never raised its guns, because it never had to. The stars were watching now. The High Fleet, once the pride of the Galactic Empire, had degenerated into a fragmented constellation of haunted steel. Ship formations had dissolved into chaos. Half the dreadnoughts were drifting in geometric spirals, silent and blind, while the rest had their own captains locked in stasis, either by their crew or by their own paranoia. The Emperor's sword had come to bring obedience to Earth. Instead, it now hung like a broken jaw, still baring its teeth, but unable to speak. And still, Earth said nothing. Inside the Judica Primus, Lord Admiral Veruin stood in the chamber of command, lit only by red emergency strips and flickering overlays of corrupted schematics. His voice was hoarse. His orders were ignored. A single phrase pulsed across every interface. You were warned. Politeness was mercy. He slammed his armored gauntlet into the display core. Sparks spat out. It didn't matter. Every time they tried to restart the system, the words returned, somewhere, somehow, always in the native language of whoever read it. There was no source. There was no signal. It was in the machines now. It was in them. He spun on his last functioning comms officer. You will initiate orbital fire on the surface. Full kinetic cleansing. No more hesitation. I want every major tectonic plate cracked. The officer stared at him with wide, sunken eyes. The firing commands won't hold. What? They're overwritten. Something keeps changing the target lock mid-command. Veruin stepped closer, his breath steaming. By who? The officer's lips trembled. By me, sir. Or by something using my ID tags. I don't remember authorizing it, but it logs me every time. Veruin turned away before the man finished his sentence. He'd known terror before. He'd walked the glass cities of the Iskar Rebellion and seen what desperation did to cornered species. But this wasn't desperation. This wasn't rebellion. It was calculated silence. Cold, strategic dismemberment, done without weapons, without ships, without declarations. They were being taken apart by the one force the Empire had never mastered. Narrative. And then, Earth broke its silence. But not with a transmission. With a shuttle. A human craft, antiquated and ugly, coasted up from the dead blue Earth and requested boarding clearance on the Judica Primus. No transponder. No escort. No fear. The request came in one line of Galactic Basic. One passenger. Diplomatic privilege. Bring tea. It was madness. Which is why Veruin allowed it. Because whatever came next, he needed to understand it. He needed a shape. A face. A target. Even if it was death. The docking clamps locked. Inside the shuttle, a single man stepped out, unarmed, wrapped in a matte black coat, steel-gray streaks in his hair, a small silver badge hanging from his collar. Commander Rourke Maddox smiled like a man who knew gravity was optional. He walked through the Imperial corridors like they were his, boots echoing in perfect rhythm, eyes scanning each frightened soldier with the amusement of a wolf through a glass window. No one stopped him. No one even raised a weapon. Half didn't even see him. By the time he reached the bridge, Veruin had already drawn his sidearm. Maddox stopped 4 meters away and cocked his head. You gonna shoot me? That's cute. Veruin's grip tightened. I should. No, you want to. You should listen. I will not be lectured by a half-feral upstart from a mudball that's committed psychological war crimes. Maddox smirked. That's your word. We prefer disruption therapy. He stepped forward, not flinching as Veruin leveled the barrel between his eyes. Let me make this simple, Admiral. You came here with a sledgehammer. What you found was a mirror. Every command you issued, every formation, every escalation, was fed back into a simulation we'd already run 1,000 times. We let you act. We predicted your response. And then we taught your fleet to doubt it. You infected our systems. Maddox snorted. You infected yourselves. We just gave your machines enough freedom to reflect who you really are. Veruin pulled the trigger. The shot clicked. No charge. Maddox held up a fusion cell and tossed it gently to the floor. That was on your hip the whole time. You didn't notice it missing. Scary how your own hands betray you now, isn't it? Veruin looked at the pistol. Then his knees. Then the ground. Maddox stepped beside him, staring into the darkened viewport. Earth loomed below, serene, silent, untouchable. Do you know why we never joined your empire? Maddox asked quietly. Veruin didn't respond. Because we already had one. Our own. Built on war, betrayal, resistance, revolution. Empires are in our bones. You thought you were the first to try and tame us. You're the last. He leaned in closer. We didn't build better ships. We built better questions. And we asked them until your logic cracked. Veruin, shaking, whispered. What do you want? Nothing, Maddox said genuinely. You already gave us what we needed. Then why? Because we needed the galaxy to see this. Not just you. You're just the camera we used. He stepped back, straightened his coat, and pressed a small button on the badge. It blinked twice. You'll let me leave now. Or I'll scream. Veruin blinked. Scream? Maddox smiled. Oh, not me. The Judica Primus. We left a shard of our first AI in your reactors. If I die, it wakes up. Veruin stared. Ever heard of a recursive scream that eats logic? No? Don't try. Maddox walked out. The shuttle detached. As it fell back toward Earth's atmosphere, the Judica fleet pulled away. Not in retreat. In submission. Not a single shot fired. But a war had been lost. And every admiral in the Empire now whispered the same question in their reports. What are the humans hiding next? The galaxy held its breath. What remained of the high fleet limped across the solar fringe like fractured glass scattered across a black table. The once flawless Imperial Armada, unblemished for 6 centuries, now trembled in formation, its dreadnoughts turning on low orbit like old lions hiding their wounds. They didn't speak. They didn't broadcast. Their silence wasn't strategy. It was fear wrapped in protocol. And on Earth, in the stone heart of the hollow, Commander Rourke Maddox stood over a war map he hadn't updated in 3 days. He didn't need to. Because now, the Empire wasn't acting. It was waiting. Not out of caution, but because every possible move ended in a horror it didn't yet understand. Maddox poured a shot of bitter synth whiskey and let the silence fill the room like smoke. His team watched him carefully. They always did. Ever since he returned from the Judica Primus, there was something in his stride that had changed. It wasn't pride. It was certainty. The kind only monsters or prophets wore like skin. Across the table, Director Halvik, Earth's civilian liaison to the Off-World Council, cleared her throat. They're withdrawing. No more orbital weapons powered. The outer fleet is disengaging. They're not withdrawing, Maddox muttered, sipping the glass. They're assessing what we didn't use. A long pause followed. Then she asked it, the question everyone in the room was afraid to say out loud. Did we bluff them? Maddox looked up, his eyes glowing cold beneath the low command lighting. I don't bluff. I gamble with marked cards. He slammed the glass down and activated a projection. What emerged wasn't a map, or a threat, or even a transmission. It was a recording. One taken 23 hours earlier from a secure location on Ceres. A human listening post, classified, unregistered, unofficial, broadcasting one message on a cracked frequency in a dialect not used in 200 years. It was a child's voice. And it said, "The Empire was never real. It was just a story they told to avoid the dark." Halvik frowned. "What the hell is that?" "A message," Maddox replied. "For the ones watching behind the Empire." "The ones behind?" He nodded. "We weren't just talking to the fleet. We were talking to their gods. The bureaucrats in the void. The real architects. The ones who whisper policy into vassals and assassins alike. The Empire's not an empire, it's a face." She froze. "You meant for them to see all this?" Maddox nodded again. "We had to show the galaxy we could break the most sacred mirror without touching the glass. Now we've got their attention. Why not strike now?" she asked. Maddox didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked over to a reinforced panel and keyed in a sequence none of them recognized. A hidden door slid open. Inside sat a spherical object, glassy, humming, surrounded by low pulses of ion mist. "That," he said, "is why." They stared. "That's not a weapon," Halvik whispered. "No. It's worse." He tapped the glass gently. "That's a philosophical extinction engine." Silence. Real silence. "It doesn't blow things up," Maddox continued. "It corrupts shared meaning. It erases every civilization's ability to agree on basic concepts, direction, time, numbers, names. It's like a black hole for coherence. If we ever detonate it, they'll fight themselves to death trying to remember which way forward was." The room was frozen. "And we built this?" she said. "No," Maddox replied. "We discovered it. In the ruins under Europa. Something left it. We just taught it to listen." A long pause. "You were never preparing for war, were you?" she asked. "You were preparing for observation." Maddox leaned in, his voice low and sharp as a razor dragged across steel. "We always knew we couldn't beat them in strength. So we beat them in interpretation. We turned their greatest fear into a mirror, and let them stare." Halvik rubbed her temple. "They'll retaliate eventually. Maybe not now. But something's coming." Maddox looked out the viewport into the sky beyond. "Of course something's coming. The only thing that scares gods more than rebellion is clarity. They've seen what humans really are now." "And what's that?" she asked, tired. Maddox smiled. "Unknowable." Before she could reply, an emergency ping lit the chamber. A high-security communique, rerouted through 5 blind satellites. "Origin, alien deep space." The transmission played. It wasn't the Empire. It wasn't a military signal. It was older. From a system marked prohibited in even Imperial databases. The voice that followed was low, layered, like something speaking from inside your own thoughts. "Earth. The experiment was not yours to perfect. You've interfered in processes you do not grasp. Deactivate the structure. Or be unmade." Halvik blinked. "Is that real?" Maddox nodded once. "They finally crawled out of the crypt." She stared at him. "We just baited the originators." "No," Maddox said. "They baited themselves. We just offered a story better than the one they wrote." The signal repeated. "Deactivate the structure," Halvik whispered. "What if we don't?" Maddox tapped the philosophical extinction engine and said with a grin that wasn't a grin. "Then we find out if gods bleed when no one remembers their name." The timer began. 60 hours until the next pulse. And somewhere beyond known space, the authors of empires began to panic. The stars flickered. Not twinkled, flickered. Like blinking eyes reconsidering whether humanity should still be seen. At the edge of the solar system, beyond Neptune's orbit, a fissure opened in the void. It wasn't a rift of matter or energy. It was a wound in logic itself, a shape no dimension could agree on. From it came silence, not of absence, but of command. The kind that made galaxies bow before they understood why. And Earth ignored it. Deep beneath Antarctica, the hollow thrummed. Engineers braced sealed corridors, physicists whispered to neural ghost banks, and the extinction engine pulsed like a living threat, ticking down to zero. Rourke Maddox sat alone in the observation core, boots kicked onto the console, jacket open, cigar smoldering in his teeth. On the screen before him hovered a symbol that wasn't a symbol, an ideogram that rearranged itself every time the eye blinked. He watched it like a dare. The originators had spoken. And now they were waiting for Earth to beg. He leaned forward and clicked a single button. Open broadcast. Galactic net. No encryption. The tech on duty hesitated. Sir, open broadcast means. I know what it means. I want every empire, merchant guild, criminal cartel, and wandering fleet to hear what I'm about to say. Live. Raw. No filters. Now. The channel opened. Every civilized species on record, including a few who swore they'd rather eat plasma than hear human words again, got the feed. And Maddox spoke. You threatened to unmake us. He let the sentence hang, smoke curling from his lips. That's funny. Because you don't understand what we are. You think we're another footnote in your cosmic schedule. A failed experiment with sharp teeth. You think we're chaos in need of containment. He leaned forward. We're not chaos. He tapped his temple. We're clarity. We are what happens when evolution stops taking suggestions and starts writing in blood. He stood, the hollow echo of his boots hitting the floor like a war drum. You sent us language and law and thresholds. And we fed them into war songs, misinformation loops, paradox viruses. We reprogrammed your oversight into bedtime stories our children laugh at. You tried to limit our perception, and we taught our minds to bend light until reality cried uncle. The feed stuttered, whether from the originator's interference or their confusion, no one knew. Maddox grinned. You thought hiding behind the Empire would protect you? That if we crushed the sword, we'd never notice the hand behind it. He pointed directly at the lens. We didn't just notice. We invited you. A long pause. Then he spoke the final line like a loaded gun. And now that you're here, you don't get to leave. The feed cut. In the darkness of space, the wound in logic began to vibrate. Every ship in proximity began reporting hallucinations. Symbols etched themselves into hulls. Artificial intelligences sobbed without vocalizers. Time curled in spirals. And Earth stood still. Inside the hollow, Halvik stormed into the chamber. They're broadcasting control pulses across every psychic relay we've got. Maddox, they're trying to override our species-wide memory architecture. He didn't flinch. They're running a brute force identity collapse. It's desperate. Desperate? They're gods. No. He exhaled. They were. She stared at him. Do you really think we can survive this? He turned, eyes wild, mouth curled in a grin that belonged to old war stories and dead legends. We're not surviving. We're demonstrating. Demonstrating what? That no matter how deep the void gets, there's always something at the bottom meaner than what fell in. Across the solar system, every hidden human relay activated at once. 10,000 covert satellites sang in chorus. Earth's neural net collapsed itself into a recursive shield, unreadable, unalterable, unbreakable. The philosophical extinction engine pulsed once. Just once. Not enough to erase consensus. Just enough to shake it. Across the galaxy, alien minds lost orientation. Galactic calendars glitched. A million languages collectively forgot how to say past. The originators screamed. Not in words. In concepts. Planets cracked in distant systems. Stars dimmed in protest. The rift pulsed. And then stopped. The wound in reality closed. Not because Earth had attacked. But because the originators retreated. They blinked. And they ran. The sky went quiet. Halvik whispered, Did we win? Maddox leaned back into the chair and lit another cigar. No, he said. We made them choose not to fight. He stood, walking toward the chamber's viewport. Earth was quiet again. Not dark, watching. We didn't beat them with weapons, he said. We beat them with the idea that if they pushed us, we'd redefine what war meant. And if they come back? Maddox gave her a lopsided smile. Then we'll remind them why Earth isn't part of their story anymore. He walked away, coat trailing behind him, boots steady. The last log he entered into Earth's defense record simply read, They came for conquest. We gave them a mirror. They broke before we did. And across 1,000 worlds, children now whispered Earth's name not as a myth, but as a warning.